It's April the 1st on the day I'm recording this, meaning that a quarter of the year has already passed. Quarter one is completely done. We're 3 months into the year now. The year is well and truly underway. And I always do a recap after every single quarter to see how my betting results have done in that quarter. But I usually do it on my own, on my spreadsheet, and at max, I'll post it on my Twitter account. But I thought since I've been doing a lot of content on YouTube lately, I'll put it on my YouTube account. And as always, I want these videos to be something that are gonna help you with your own betting, so you will have a takeaway from this video. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through some of the most notable results of the last quarter. I'm gonna tell you my results in full, but then we're gonna speak about specific events where I've done well or where I've done not well. And we're gonna see what I've done correct or what I can improve on. And that's gonna help you with your own MMA betting as well. So straight off the bat, it's been an amazing year. It's been the best year of my entire life when it comes to sports betting. I am up over 50 units in just a 3-month period. A lot of professional gamblers out there don't make 50 units on the entire year. And if they did make 50 units on the entire year, which is a 50% increase in their bankroll, it would be a massively successful year for them. So for me to be in profit over 50 units in just 3 months, in what would be considered a very successful year over 12 months, and I did it in 3, I can't be anything other than over the moon and super happy, and that's exactly what I am. But I'm not resting on my laurels. I'm not resting up. In fact, I'm gonna actually put even more work in now because I wanna continue winning this amount of money. I've won so much money this year. My bank balance is looking fat, and I want this to continue, so I'm even more motivated than before to keep up the hard work, and that's really what's been making me profitable this year. It's hard work coupled with a new MMA betting strategy I made towards the end of last year. Those two things have made me earn a lot of money. So I'm gonna bring up my screen right now so you can see it. And we're gonna basically go through exactly how we've been doing this year. So if we go to Google and we type in betmma.tips space lucrative MMA, it's gonna bring up my third-party tracking record. Because unlike all of the other fraud handicappers out there, all of the other fakes, I actually track all of my picks. So you can go back and see a record of all of my winning picks and all of my losing picks over the last 5 years. Half of a decade I've been tracking my picks, win or lose, and I cannot edit these after the fact. If I win, it shows as a win. If I lose, it shows as a loss. And I cannot delete picks and I cannot edit the picks. So I'm fully transparent with you guys. If I have a losing pick, a losing weekend, a losing month, I show you. It's all there. I don't even need to show you. You can go and check it yourself. This is what separates me from all the other fakes and frauds and scumbags in this industry, because this industry is riddled with them, make no mistake about it. But anyway, if we click onto my third-party tracking record, we get to see my entire record over the last half of a decade, as I said. But we're just gonna focus on the last quarter of this year, 2024. So we come to this page here and we scroll down, right? And this is every single event I've ever bet on. So if we scroll down, like we're in 2023 now, if we continue scrolling down, we hit 2022. There we go. If we continue scrolling down, and you can see the date on the left, we hit 2021. We continue scrolling down, we hit 2020. We continue scrolling down, we hit 2019. I mean, there's literally every single event that I've ever bet on. UFC, PFL, Bellator, Cage Warriors, LFA, Rising, One Championship, Dana White's Contender Series. Every single event I've ever bet on, you can see my results right here. So let's go all the way to the top, and we'll start from January, and we'll go through a couple of the events that we've won and lost on, and I'll speak about them and what I learned from those events. So if we just start from here, 12th of January is the first event, right? Because obviously the UFC have a break, right? So the 12th of January is here. So if we just scroll up, so this is like the last event, so you can just focus on this. So yeah, the first event we ever bet on this year was on the 12th of January, is LFA, so it's a regional scene event. So I also bet on regional scene as well as major organizations. And you can see I laid out 4.5 units and I won 5.6 units of profit, which was 124% ROI. So a very good start to the year, right? It was triple figure ROI and over 5 units of profit. So a very healthy start to 2024. And straight off the bat, guys, I'm gonna give you a little takeaway. And that is that when you're betting on MMA, you can find massive value on smaller organizations like LFA, just as we did here. And the reason is because those markets are not as big, right? The people betting on those markets, there's not as many people. The bookmakers are not as sharp on these markets because they can't take that much money down on these markets, meaning that high roller gamblers, people with real money, big syndicates around the world. For the most part, these guys are focusing on UFC because they can get more money down on those markets. And that's exactly what I'm doing. But I don't neglect the smaller markets. While my focus is heavily on the UFC and big markets, I still bet on these smaller markets because you can get more value based on the reasons I just told you. Now, it's true that a lot of times these smaller markets, it ain't even worth me betting on because I can't get that much money down on them. I mean, I'm putting a lot of money down. You've seen me 2 weeks ago bet $50,000 on Peyton Talbot. I would never be able to get $50,000 on an LFA fight, but I can get $500 down on multiple lines, and over time, you know, if I put 2 or 3 grand down on one fighter at worse and worse lines, because I do move the lines when I bet on these lines, that's just how the market works, the liquidity is small, it can still be worth it for me. So I don't fully neglect it, I still bet on these markets, and overall, most people in the world are not betting as big as me, right? So a takeaway for you can be that there's a lot of value to be found on these smaller markets. It's just that you can't bet that much money into them and the limits are very low and the liquidity is low. So there's a little catch-22 there. But if you're betting $100 units, $50 units, then start doing tape for these small organizations because you can earn a good amount of money based on your unit size, and it's a lot easier to find value in these markets. So that's a quick tip right off the back, but let's move on. The next event, we won't speak about that event. Anchor Live versus Walker, 1.9 units of profit. Then we had a KSW event, 0.3 units of profit. So straight off the bat, we've had 3 events in 2024 and they've all been profit. And then it come the big one, right? It was the second UFC event of the year, UFC 297. And I laid out 26 units and we won 43.9 units. It was one of the greatest weekends of my entire life. Sports betting, I won over $100,000 on UFC 297 and I had 169% ROI. It was absolute insanity, boys. Like I said, one of the best weekends of my entire life. And if we go to that event, we can actually have a little closer look at it and tell you why I won this money. So first of all, we swept the straight picks, right? I had Neil Magny to beat Mike Malott. That was plus 300. Sean Woodson to beat Charles Jourdain. Tavares to beat City. Patterson to beat Lioness, Flick to beat Malcolm Gordon. I mean, there's literally a lesson in every single one of these fights. And I'm just gonna touch on them very quickly because I don't want this video to be 30 or 40 minutes, which it can be if I'm trying to do a long lecture or if I'm trying to give you massive jewels, I have to speak for longer. But let's just go from the top to the bottom, right? Neil Magny over Mike Malott. Well, I bet on Neil Magny to beat Mike Malott. And we'll zoom out here so we see the profit. I bet on Neil Magny to beat Mike Malott, and the reason I did that is because Mike Malott was unproven in the 15-minute distance. He had never won a 15-minute fight in the UFC. Matter of fact, the only time he did go into the 3rd round, he looked very gassed out. It was a long time ago. I think it was something crazy like it had been 9 years since he went into round 3, but he didn't look good in that round 3, right? So I can't just assume that his cardio is better now. And Neil Magny is an absolute veteran who will put it on you, and that's exactly what he did, man. Mike Malott couldn't get him out of there. And Neil Magny turned it up in round 3 and got the ground and pound finish. It was exactly what I predicted, because if we scroll down, I actually bet on Neil Magny to win in round 3 at odds of plus 3,300, which is just absolute insanity now you look back at it. I mean, there's a reason why I bet on that, right? I also laid more money on Neil Magny to win by submission in round 3, because I thought Mike Malott would be on the ground, I thought he would give up positions, and Neil maybe take the neck home or something. That's exactly what happened, but Neil Magny just ended up ground and pound into a TKO victory. So if he would have submitted him, which obviously the sub was live, damn, it would have been something crazy it would have been almost close to a 70 unit profit, that event. But anyway, so yeah guys, like understand that if these fighters are unproven over the 15-minute distance, and you've got a guy who's proven over the 15-minute distance, who actually wins fights on cardio, and is a UFC veteran, and the opponent, Mike Malott, is taking a step up in competition, you instantly bet Neil Magny, one of the easiest bets I've ever made. And yeah, it cashed. You know, he was getting beat up in round 1 and 2, but that's what I thought would happen. Next fight was Sean Woodson versus Charles Jourdain. And man, honestly, I don't have too much to say about this fight. The reason I bet on it is because Sean Woodson is kind of a bad stylistic matchup for Jourdain. I mean, Jourdain wins fights via aggression, cardio, and Sean Woodson was just a longer striker. And you don't really outpace Sean Woodson. I mean, I guess Julian Erosa did it, but for the most part, Sean Woodson, he had a massive reach advantage, massive height advantage. I just thought he'd pick him apart from range, and I thought the fight would be -110. Next one I'll speak about, I don't want to speak about all of them. As I said, I don't want the video to be too long. We'll speak about Jimmy Flick versus Malcolm Gordon. Jimmy Flick was the underdog against Malcolm Gordon. I bet him at +110 and he went off +170. Absolute insanity. It's very, very rare where I missed the line, but I just missed the line then. Jimmy Flick is so dangerous on the ground, and Malcolm Gordon has showed time and time again that he gives up bad positions on the ground. How the hell can you make Jimmy Flick an underdog? It made no sense. The difference in dangerousness, right, in this fight was massive, absolutely massive. So just based on the danger factor alone, Jimmy Flick shouldn't have been an underdog. So yeah, I think this was a ridiculous line. Jimmy Flick is always going to have chances to submit Malcolm Gordon in that fight. Like literally, if they fight 100 times, Jimmy Flick's going to have a chance to submit him probably 90 times. And the other 10 times he just breaks his leg in round 1 or gets knocked out. So yeah, boys, this was amazing. We had Jazadovicius to win in round 3. And I guess what I learned from this event is just like, you know, when you have reads, just don't be scared to lay money. You know, we laid out 26 units on this card, and a lot of people would say that you should never lay out 26 units on a card, but I vehemently disagree. But I only disagree based on my historic data, right? The only reason I lay this amount of money is because my historic data tells me that if I do that overall, I'm gonna be in profit on MMA. You know, I've been betting on MMA for close to a decade now, and I have lots of data of me betting on MMA. Now, some people, they may do a lot better just placing 1 or 2 bets a card. Actually, I know somebody who bets 1 bet every 2 weeks or something, a bet that he really likes, and that's how he builds his bankroll. But me, I just fire. I just spit fire every single week for the most part, unless there's no value like there has been once or twice this year. And it works out for me very well. So I just want to reiterate the point that there's no one way to bet the game. And anybody who says anything, whether it be on social media, Twitter, YouTube, whatever it may be, books, anybody who tells you that there's one good way of gambling or only one way to gamble, they're full of shit and you shouldn't listen to them. There's many different ways to skin a cat, and there's many different ways to gamble. So make sure you're honing in on your skill set while trying to improve your deficiencies when you're gambling. And don't be afraid to go heavy, go large, or make a lot of bets if you are confident in those reads and if the historical data backs you up to do that. AKA you've proven via historical data, via third-party track record, like I've got here, or just your own tracking, that you have the ability to place a large amount of wagers and still profit. Let's go back and see some of the other events. Actually, let's speak about a loss now. I want to speak about a loss. So if we go to this UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Pyfer card, you can see here that we lost 15 units, right? So a very big loss there. So we click on this card and we'll have a look. We'll go over to this page which shows all of my events, and we'll scroll up to the Hermansson versus Pyfer card. So yeah, here we go. So like on this card, you can see we almost lost every single money line bet. We did cash on Rodolfo Vieira versus Arman Petrosyan. And I mean, the little takeaway there is just like binary matchup. If the grappler is going to get his game going, he's going to dominate. So I just took a risk on him doing it, and he did, and he dominated just as I thought. I also thought that the submission upside, aka the danger factor, was massively in the favor of Petrosyan, but they was giving me a pick 'em line. So other bets I had, Timothy Kawamba versus Balaji Oki. Now, I played him at +170 and I made it a 5-unit bet, right? Now, while I believe that +170, you know, was a decent play, you know, pre-fight, it wasn't the worst, but I mean, it was a close fight, it was a boring fight, not much happened. I shouldn't be playing 5 units on this type of fight, you know. It was a mistake that I made there. I should be playing 5 units on fights where I have a stronger read, and like how I played 10 units, my biggest bet of the last few years on Peyton Talbot over Cameron Simon, because I knew what was going to happen in that fight. You know, it was clear to me to see. I had a good read on the fight. I didn't have a great read on this Kawamba Oki fight. I just thought it should be about a pick'em. But if I think it should be a pick'em, I shouldn't be betting 5 units for the most part. Obviously, at times you can do that. But I think I did cap Kawamba a bit of a favourite. But basically, the takeaway here is not that I wouldn't bet on Kawamba, because if they fought again and Kawamba was +170 pre-fight, right? If they fought again pre-fight, I wouldn't change my bet. I would still bet it if I didn't know what was going to happen, obviously. I'd still bet it, but I wouldn't play 5 units on it. It was way too risky, and it's just a rookie mistake I made. Next bet, Bruno Brazil against Loma Lookboonmee. Again, like, I have to be fully honest, I don't regret this. +235, and the fight looked about 50-50. So there's no way I regret that. I don't even regret the sizing. I actually regret nothing about that. The next bet I had was Fernando Garcia versus Haider Emil. Yeah, I guess I regret this a little bit. I thought Emil would catch him early, but I thought Garcia would weather the storm and come back. You know, it's hard for me to analyze this fight and say I was one of the worst bets of all time at plus 170 or I massively regret it. I don't really. I guess I could have just passed, you know, but, you know, he just got caught with a big shot and he couldn't really recover. So it's kind of hard for me to base anything there. But I guess he didn't get a win in the UFC, never looked good in the UFC, ended up getting finished in the UFC after being very tough. So probably just not a UFC level fighter. And I guess I shouldn't be betting on fighters if they're not UFC level. So that'll be my takeaway on this one. Now, if we look at the parlays here, I had Devin Clark in a parlay. And it's just a terrible bet at the end of the day, guys. Minus 180 or something like that. And I just thought he'd be able to get the takedowns, you know, and he just wasn't able to get him. And when he wasn't able to get him, he just looked checked out. He looked mentally like he didn't want to be there. He looked very, very bad. Another takeaway I have on this fight, boys, is that one of the reasons I bet Devin Clark is that it was because it was his last fight on his contract. So I thought he'd come out hard. I thought he'd come out pushing. But he did the exact opposite. He had one of the worst performances of his entire career, and he looked kind of like William Knight in there, where he just didn't want to do anything. So I massively overrated the fact that he was on his last fight on his contract. It made no difference to the fight at all. It actually may have hindered him in some way, maybe mentally. So it just reiterates the point that I already knew, to kind of ignore outside of the octagon stuff. Not all of the time, there's definitely a time and place for it, but in that fight, I should have ignored that, but I didn't. And then, you know, look, if we just scroll down, I just missed on a lot of props here, boys. Another thing I did really bad was in the Michael Johnson fight, right? I played Darius Flowers to win in round 1 and Michael Johnson to win in round 2 and round 3. Obviously, it was live. Michael Johnson could have won in round 2 and round 3, but he didn't. And guess what else I did? I bet on Jack Hermansson to win in round 3, 4, and 5 and Pyfer to win in round 2. So I thought I was being very smart here, boys, because I was basically covering everybody's win condition. You know, Flowers early, Pyfer early. And while I was actually correct in those fights to some degree, Darius Flowers' win condition was early. Joe Pyfer's win condition was early. For some reason, I just dramatically underestimated Michael Johnson's ability to go to decision, or Flowers' ability to last the decision. I did the exact same thing with Joe Pyfer. So if I was actually betting on this, I would have bet on Jack Hermansson at plus 200 or something. I was actually close to betting on him, but I was like, you know what? There's a better way to bet on him. I'll just bet on him in rounds 3, 4, and 5. But Jack doesn't push a crazy pace. So yeah, it was a big wake-up call for me here to not underestimate fighters' ability to last the decisions and not overestimate fighters' ability to finish the fight. Because sometimes, you know, fighters just get tired and they just want to survive, kind of how Flowers was just surviving in that round 3. So yeah, just a big wake-up call for me in this one, boys. You know, I did the same in the Guskov fight. I done Guskov to win in round 1 and 2 and then Pauga to win in 2, 3. And it paid off in that one, you know. Guskov won and I profited overall on that fight. But I only profited a little bit, and collectively I lost so much money based on the Flowers, Johnson and Hermansson Pyfer fights. So a big lesson there for me, big wake-up call. So I'm not gonna go through too many more events. Actually, I won't go through any more events. You know, I'll wrap the video up shortly. But if we just come back here, we can see all of the events that have been happening this year since the 12th of January. And yeah, it's just been massive profit this year, boys. It's been really, really good. Unfortunately, making this video, I'm coming off an 18-unit loss, which was literally the worst loss I've took the entire year. As you can see here, if you look to the right, you can see that the last event, Blanchfield versus Ferro, that was a minus 18.7 unit event. And if you just scroll down and look at every single other event, everyone has been higher than that, right? So the next worst loss was UFC 299, which was minus 16 units. So unfortunately, making this video, I'm coming off the worst event of the year, but it is what it is, boys. I mean, look how much green there is compared to the red there. There's a lot of green. We've won a lot more events than we've lost. And if we just scroll down, boys, there's so many events that we've lost. Minus 3 units, minus 0.4 units, minus 5 units. I mean, look how many minuses there are there. But guess what? There's way more pluses, or there's way more greens, which means plus, right? So, you know, I mean, it means nothing to me that I lost minus 18 units, because overall the year has been insanity. As I said, I'm up over a half of a bankroll, which is absolutely crazy, and it's only been 3 months. So I'm gonna keep on cracking on, boys. I'm gonna keep on keeping my head down, keep trying to cash as we have been doing most of the year. And that's it, not too much more to say. You know, it's been an amazing year and we're actually en route for a plus 200 unit year, which would be by far the biggest year I've ever had. It wouldn't be close. So the most important thing is just for me to ride out these losses. You know, as I said, I'm coming off an 18 unit loss. We just have to ride out that loss so we can profit next week. If you don't ride out the losses in sports betting, you're never gonna be there for the wins. So you're gonna lose and then stop, and then the last thing that happened to you was a loss. Whereas if you lose, continue and win, then the last thing that happened to you was a win. Then you can continue winning. You know, imagine I stopped after all of those losses that I showed you. I literally just showed you on the screen. So many minuses. I lost so many times, but I just won way more. And when I did win, I won more than my losses. So overall, it adds up as a win. You know, the number one thing I see happening in sports betting, and the number one critique I can have for 99% of people, is that they get too angry and emotional over losses. They cannot deal with losses. That's really what it comes down to. You know, they can't control their emotions. They're emotionally volatile. And if you cannot control your emotions, you're never gonna be able to be successful in this game, because this game is literally about being stoic, being unemotional, and coming back from your losses unemotionally so you can take your wins. So that's it, boys. I'm gonna keep putting out videos on this YouTube channel every single week, as I always do, hoping to make you a better MMA gambler. If you wanna sign up and get all of my picks and cash just like I've shown you we've been doing almost this entire year, then go to lucrativemmabetting.com. I cannot promise you profit on any one specific single event, but I can promise you a truckload of cash, a truckload of profit over the long term. So Lucrative MMA Betting for all my picks and predictions, or you could just keep watching me for free on YouTube. Up to you, my guys. The real stuff is on the website, but I'm still putting out hella value on this YouTube channel. So good luck on your bets this weekend, and let's cash these tickets. Bang!